Hey there, folks. So, last episode we were actually partway through working on our more complex needs. We added in things for our proteins, carbs, fats, things like that. Let's just pull those up here quickly. So, yeah, we added in our fats, carbs, proteins, vitamins, things like that. And we set up some placeholder side effects for having too much or too little of the required. Obviously, these are, as I just said, placeholders. If your character doesn't have enough fats, they're not going to take has too much, like good fats in their food, and they eat too much of that, it's going to not damage your health. It's going to have other side effects. But these were just placeholders so we could actually start seeing them having an effect in game. As I said, though, we're going to go through last episode. We're going to go through and we're going to start setting up things for our blood loss screen effect, and we're also going to start setting up. I said we were going to do some work on the calories, but I've done some digging into that, and it's going to be a little more involved before I get around to working on that. Just because caloric intake is actually pretty complex when you try to put it through into a game level. By game level, I mean like putting it into a game. So, but as I mentioned, the first thing we're going to work on this episode is trying to add some screenplay effects to the player camera as their blood levels reduce. So, how we're going to do that, though, we are going to start by actually just closing out of the editor here. We're going to go back into Visual Studio. Now, some of you may notice there is a little change in the quality of audio. I had a friend of mine come over and help me with my setup. He's a little more experienced with audio. The way he described my audio setup is I'd have better luck using rocks, but it is what it is. So he did help and make a few adjustments, so you may notice the audio is a little better. We'll see how that goes, though. All right, so Visual Studio has finished debugging. So as I was saying, the first thing we're going to do is start working on our screen effects for the blood, or loss of blood. Right now we do have this function here: blueprint callable, blueprint pure, get blood screen saturation constant. For that, what we are doing, if we just go to our definition here, go to definition, thank you, we're just returning the percentile of our blood. So what we want to do with that is we're going to use that to create a desaturation effect to start with on our player camera. So how we're going to do that, we're going to go into our player character source file, and we're going to go to our tick function, because this is something we want to do every frame. So where is tick? There it is. Now, we do have a few different things. Well, right now we only have one thing, that's our ray tracing, but we do have ultimately a few different things we're going to be putting into our tick function. And what we want to do there is, well, first of all, we're going to want to update our blood. Update camera saturation. So, telesense. So with that, we could, as we've done before, just create a bunch of code, well, add a bunch of code here to do it. But like I normally do, I want to create a helper function for this, just because we want to try and keep each individual function as small as we possibly can. Using the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid, or keep it stupid simple, however you want it to be described, however you want to explain that acronym, I should say. There is obviously going to be some exceptions, like your constructor here, it's going to have to be big. But so with that, we're going to go into our header file quickly, This is going to be a private function. Its components, its input. I need to do some organization in here. Void update screen saturation. And once IntelliSense gives us that, we'll create our definition. Now this one, because we're not worried about time passing or anything like that, we're not passing in this, the delta time. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to quickly go to our tick function and throw that in there. Save, and we can go up here where our new function was added. So first things first, float saturation equals stat line. Actually, sorry. Get stat line, get blood screen saturation. Now we have two cameras with this. We have our first person and our third person, and we are going to want to make sure we update both of those. But oh, what is it? First person camera. I can never remember what it falls under. Is it post processing? Yeah. Okay, so we need a vector 4 for this. Equals, so we're going to go f vector 4, and we're just going to put saturation in all 4 values. Actually, no. Alpha, I think we can leave at 1. And IntelliSense, doing its normal, doesn't let me pull everything in there. So that should, if I am remembering correctly here, this should update the first person camera. So I'm just going to copy all of that and follow camera. We're going to do the same thing. So now that should do what we need to do for the screen saturation. However, we need to add a way to actually change our blood levels. So why is IntelliSense not letting me save my files? Is that Windows Defender? It's Windows Defender. Okay. There you go. For anyone wondering, I do have Windows 11, obviously. I was not aware of the whole dev drive protection setup when I built my machine. So unfortunately, my drive I use for all my coding is not a dev drive, so it's getting constantly scanned, and I haven't found a way to enable that on an existing drive. You can only do it when you set up a new drive, from what I found, which is kind of stupid, but hey, it's Microsoft. Anyways, so as I was saying, we've got this set up here, so we should be updating our screen saturation based on the amount of blood we have. What we are going to do here is go to our stat line component. I want components because I already have the header open. And we're going to take a quick look at, we're going to take a quick look at our tick blood, just so we can see what our logic was there, because it's been a little while since I recorded the last episode. Current bleed amount is greater than 0. Blood loss equals current bleed amount times delta time. Blood.tick. Okay, so we need to adjust our current bleed amount. So what we're going to do, and this is just for the debug purposes of this, begin play. I'm going to set that to 10. We'll see how this goes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run a quick build here. This shouldn't take too long, as I was just in the editor, and we've only made, what, one header change for the player character. But anyways, while this builds, so as I mentioned last episode, we're going to work on the bleed. I thought I was going to work on the carbs. Not carbs, I keep saying carbs. Calories, which unfortunately, like I said, after doing some additional digging, the calories are just going to be a little more complex. I need to do a little more planning there before I can go through and say, yes, this is what I want. Or close to, that is. And then, so once we get this bleed effect working, if we have time left in this episode, I'm going to work on, I'm trying to think, most games call it satiation. Fullness, it's how much you've eaten. Because one thing I was thinking about after last episode is the way this is currently coded is you could just sort of sit there at the start of the day, like in-game day, eat an entire day's worth of food, and then you're good. However, if you tried doing, well, most people tried doing that in the real world, they physically couldn't. They'd end up being sick because they eat too much. So I wanted to add in some logic for that as well. So that's something else I'm hoping we can get in this episode. Okay, why are you not actually building? So for anyone unfamiliar, 2 minutes with nothing. Anyone unfamiliar, I've found, at least with Visual Studio, sometimes it's because of Windows Defender. I've just turned that off. It can sit here and get hung. I don't know if it's the Unreal integration. I don't see this with other projects, like non-Unreal coding work I do. So, all right. Well, with that then, folks, I had planned on trying to just keep going with this, but obviously there's something that's hanging this build. So we're going to pause the video here, and I will be back once this is built and we're back in the editor and we can test out these code changes. All right, so we are in the editor now. We've launched things up. So let's just see if those code changes we made to the bleed effect is actually going to work. Oh, come on, editor. Oh, I jumped out. Resume. Character. Where's our stat line? Come on. Blood. Okay, you can see that's going down. Okay, that isn't actually affecting... Oh, now it's going back up. 10 wasn't enough. So, okay, so we're going to stop there. We're going to close it out of the editor again, because as I had mentioned a few episodes ago, I've actually turned off live coding because I just found it sucked. So a value of 10 dropped us to about 50. So I'm going to drop that, change this to a value of like 18. And that should get us down to almost 0, which should be an almost complete desaturation if our code worked, which I don't think it's going to. So, however, what I want to do is use this as a way to then hop into the editor and look at some of these settings through blueprints, because not everything is very clear within the C++ side of things. I actually find myself having to do this quite a lot. I have to hop into the editor, into a blueprint, and then poke around and say, oh, okay, this is what I'm wanting to do. This is where it is. So we'll hop in and just see if this makes a difference here. So search for a character. Our stat line, we'll see our bleed amount. Okay, that actually dropped us down to 0, and we still had 10 left. Yeah, it's exponential the way I've wrote that. So, okay, so as we can see though, that's not actually affecting our camera. So we're going to open up our third person blueprint here. There we go. And we're going to start with our first person camera. And what sort of options are we looking for here? Actually, saturation, post-processing, color grading. That's what we were working with, wasn't it? Color saturation. Okay, let's see. So first person camera, post-processing. Color grading, color saturation is what we were working with. Okay, that might not be what we want. So I'm going to drop our global saturation down to 0.1 and just see. So this is some of the things you can do when you're struggling with finding exactly what settings you need to tweak. Come into your editor, make a change in the blueprint, because that's a global... Oh, that's sort of what I wanted there. Okay, and that's got what I wanted there now. So why did that not work? And then this should brighten it up slowly, if this is actually working. Yeah, you can see some reds coming back. So we're about 20%. So yeah, this is going to take a little while to come back, but I want to do this slowly so we can actually see what's going on, how it's affecting the color grade on the screen, and see if this is actually coming back to where we want it to be. So, okay, so that is slowly going up. So let's take where's our first person camera? Okay, so we had set that to 0.1. We can see this, and this is what we're changing in our tick. So let's just change these to 1. Yeah, it won't because the tick will override it. So no, that is doing what I want. Why didn't it work last time? So okay, let's stop here. I'm going to just, in our third person blueprint, I'm going to put this back to 1. Compile and save that. And for anyone wondering, things that are set at a code level. So let's get rid of this line because it's going to cause build problems if we don't. So let's just hop to our constructor quickly. So anything that's defined here in your constructor is a default setting. And you guys can't see me doing air quotes, obviously. But it's a default setting. And changes that you make within your blueprint are going to override that. So okay, let's just try this again. And we're going to go to our third person character, our first person camera. Okay, we can see our saturation. Okay, no, it is doing what I want. I don't know what was happening there. It just didn't seem to work those first couple of times. So that is what I wanted there. That adds a desaturation effect as you start losing blood. And that is something that I might have to increase my lean values. I was hoping to achieve. Oh no, it just doesn't look too much when you're not looking around a corner. That was basically what I was hoping to achieve. You can see it's slowly climbing back up. We're starting to get color back. I need to remember that the bleed amount is exponential the way it's set. So That's a good one to remember. Now, there is other things we can do. So we're actually going to look at those in Blueprint before I start messing around in code. So let's see what other post-processing effects we can add. Let's collapse all of these. Depth of field. Okay, so what we're going to do here, this is another thing I recommend you can do, is you can make changes in blueprints, mess around in there. And it's something for anyone who watched. There was a live stream Epic did on the difference between blueprints and C++. In there, they actually mentioned mess around in code. Mess around in blueprints, figure out what you need to do, and then transfer that to code. So we're going to do that here. So with our first person camera, we're looking at depth of field. So, no, that's not what I want. Okay, how do we do that? Oh, they weren't added in yet. Okay, that's why. All right. Well, actually, no, we want to do that. So post-processing settings, break, and then post-processing. Make. So we have this get blood screen saturation. It is the same as getting stat percentile. However, this is dedicated to just the blood character. Anyways, so what were we changing? There's color grade. Let's quickly check. Color saturation was what we were working on. So we don't want to make any additional changes to saturation. So we want to carry what we pulled out and passing that back in. So depth of field. Oh, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to do that on this one. And let's just do some weird math on that. I'm going to go 1. Actually, let's go multiply instead. Let's see if that does what I'm wanting there. Nope. Okay, so these are the various different things. So actually what I'm going to do here is, just for ease, I'm going to break the pin. We're going to play. Go to our third person character, select our first person camera, and then we can start messing around with things. So depth of field, change its scale to 5. What's that do? Oh, 2's its max. So these are some of the things you can do. You can just go through and check your settings. Okay, so none of these are doing, actually, yeah. So mobile depth of field does nothing. So we're going to turn all those off. What's in our advanced settings? Occlusion, sky distance, vinaigrette size. Nope. Bloom. Okay, we're going to change that. Put a bloom. Bloom might be an interesting one to use. So, okay, that's one to think about. Exposure, no. Chromatic aberration. That's not doing anything. No, that's not. So, and these are all the different things you can go through and set. You can change your color grades, things like that. Depth of field. Oh, we're doing mobile depth of field. That might be why. Okay, and that's something else we can add, depth of field. So let's just start turning some of these off to see, okay, where we want to start working. I like that effect. So we want focal distance. Okay, I'm just going to grab a piece of paper and pen here. This is something I'd also recommend you have when you're doing work. And sorry for the squeaky chair. I need a new one. You want to have a piece of paper and a pen handy at all times. I know in the day and age of tech, most people are going to be using computers, but I found a pen and paper handy. So, depth of field, focal, and blur radius. All right. Let's turn those off. Well, actually, let's see. Focal distance, we want to slow these down, lower these down. Okay, so focal distance of 0. Is no blur. Focal distance of, let's try 100. You can see in front of us pretty clearly. 500. 5,000. 50,000. Okay, so turn off our focal distance and our depth blur radius. I think we keep, actually, let's put that back to 1. Let's see, we want 500, 1, 0. Okay, depth blur radius doesn't seem to actually do anything. Our focal distance is trying to figure out a way we could transition this between okay, so between 0.1 and 0.2. So sensor width, 0.1 to 0.2. All right, so that one's an easy one to do. Squeeze. So we turn off squeeze factor. So we enable focal distance. And we can't really transition between that, but if we go 1, 1, no. Okay, we'll just set focal distance to 1, 0.15. Nope. Okay, so it's actually not 0.15. So we have a 0.05 range we need to transition between. All right. And we've got our global saturation. Shadows, not worried about that. Midtones, highlights. So color grading, we're applying to effects there already. Film. Let's actually get rid of those depth of field effects. So we want to look at other potential options here. Film, no. Film grain. Okay, so on its own, that's doing nothing. Now, does it need a texture? Let's try that one. Yeah, I don't know enough about film grade to worry about using that, so we're going to turn that off. I do like the depth of field sensor width, though. The depth of field stuff. So it was focal length, blur, and sensor width. So let's take a look at those and see what sort of settings we want to go between. Focal distance, sorry. So focal distance of 0. I'm going to change that sensor width to okay, let's see. So this is something you want to play around with. Depth, blur radius, focal distance, and 1. Yeah, okay. So really we want to leave the focal distance at 1. 1. Blur radius at 1, and it's our sensor width. So with that, I'm actually going to stop Play in Editor. I'm going to close out of the editor. What I'm going to do first, though, is just clean up this stuff we put in here, because we don't actually need this. So close out of that. Close out of the editor, and we'll go back into our code. So player character, and we want to, so actually what I'm going to do is we're going to do everything here. Yes, IntelliSense, let me save. Thank you. Okay, so we have our saturation. Post-processing settings, depth of field, play count, blur amount, blur radius equals 1. Copy this. And these are, though we're putting these in something that's being called every tick, I'm actually going to move these over into the constructor, because that is going to depth of field, focal distance. So these are ones you want to put in the constructor, because we're not changing that value. We are setting those to a value, and they're going to stay there. It's going to be the sensor width that we're going to be changing. And what I'm going to do here as well is I'm just going to apply that same thing to the follow camera, which is our third person, over the shoulder. And we're going to go back up here, and then first person camera, post processing settings, depth of field, and that was our sensor width. So that's going to be here. Well, now we need to get that value between 0.1 and 0.15. So we need to take that 0. Actually, I'm just going to set that to 0 for the purpose, so I can do this without getting issues. Add in a comment. So we need to go from to based on a value that's going to range between 0 and 1. So what I would suggest doing here, math isn't overly complex, but we know we have a value of 0.05 that we need to adjust by. So I would do 0.05 minus 0.05 times by the saturation. What this is going to do is at a value, our saturation at a value of 1, we are going to have 0.05 times the saturation. We are going to reduce this down by 0.05, so this is going to be 0. It's going to leave us at that value of 0.1. So we want 0.15 minus 0.05 times by saturation. Get rid of all this useless code in there. And we're going to do the same thing. Don't want to do it there. We want to do it after our saturation, and we're going to apply that to our follow camera. Now what this should do is create a gradual blur effect on the player camera and a desaturation. So if this works, then that is probably where I'm going to leave the bleed effect for now, because I actually quite like what is happening there. So let's pull the editor over. All right, so now we're back in. We're back in, but it's not responding. It's very slow. This is something, again, anyone who's following along or working through Unreal Engine using your IDE to launch the editor, you're going to find it's incredibly unresponsive. I found that it doesn't matter what IDE I'm using, whether I've got my recording software running or not, it is very unresponsive when you first start up, because there's a lot of things that happen in the background. So let's see, let's actually check that character, look at that camera, because it's not really giving me that blur effect. And yeah, it's going back down. Maybe it was needed to recompile the... That's something else I've seen. Sometimes you make a code change, you actually have to recompile your blueprint. Let's try this again. Let's see if that makes a difference. Because yeah, we are setting that. Yeah, because there it's 0.15. It doesn't take effect until I enable. Maybe we have to set those. So this is something, I will be honest, I'm relatively new with working, is post-processing at a C++ level. I'm going to just comment these out for now because I want to Can't. Okay, so what I'm going to try there, we're going to just close out of the editor quickly. And I'm going to go grab that stuff, whatever constructor that I put in there. See if that makes a difference. Because for some reason, those settings aren't being applied. Oh, is there a post-processing update call? Actually, let me cancel this build. Add extra, get extra. This may be something similar to, let's try render. Damage needs to be sent at the end of the frame. Let's try that, actually. That could just be similar to, let me pull up our tree actor, because we had to do it there. The mark component render state dirty. That is the force it to re-render. So let's give that a shot. And for anyone new and following along, this is how I've wanted to approach this series. Because A, it's me working on my game that I plan on hopefully releasing. And B, it's showing people what development is really like. I know there's far too many tutorials out there that are just do this, 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 and this. Everything goes smoothly because the person recording, and I'll stop for a second there. I'm not saying those are bad tutorials. They're very informative for people who understand programming. For anyone looking to get into programming who's new to Unreal, it doesn't cover or show a lot of the gotcha mistakes that you're going to make or some of the struggles because they're all pre-planned, they're scripted. 90% of the time, the person's already written the entire code out that they're doing. They'll have it off to a screen on one side, and they're copying what they've done. So, either way, okay, so let's give this a shot and see if that actually worked. We'll know probably before I even get to this, but yeah, it's not working, so. Or is that something we have to just set in there? Let's see when this drops back down to 0.1, if that fixes things. And if that's the case, we may just have to set that setting in the blueprint. I don't know. But yeah, so while we wait on this, that's where I was going into, or what I was getting into there when I said it's not the best I've found. These other tutorials, because like I said, don't get me wrong, they are informative, but they are scripted, they're pre-planned, they show you exactly what to do. A lot of them don't say why, and a lot of them don't show the bouncing back and forth and seeing, okay, does this work, does that work? And then really it's just a guessing game. Whereas what I'm trying to do, I'm not saying this is the same for every developer out there, but what I'm trying to do is sort of give a glimpse of, okay, well, it takes forever to come back, this depth of field. But anyway, sorry. What I'm trying to do is give people an insight into the development process for at least myself, who's a wannabe indie dev. I don't call myself an indie dev yet, not because I'm trying to be disparaging against myself or anything like that. Just simply because I'm not... okay, and that... what is going on there? This just makes no sense. Because then... okay, so let's pull these up in the blueprint and see if we can make some adjustments there and see if that helps. So we want sensor width, focal distance, compile that. I'm going to hit play. Okay, the saturation is updating, but okay, so obviously there's something really screwed up with the depth of field, and I'm not sure how that's working. So again, like I was saying, this is the sort of stuff that you're going to have happen while you're developing. You're going to stumble across something you're not sure on what you need to do. Well, I'm not sure what I need to do here. I need to do some more investigation into post-processing effects. So just for clarity, I went through and I turned off all of the depth of field settings I've done there. I'm actually going to close out of the editor for now. And for the purpose of this, I'm just going to get rid of the depth of field stuff. I'm going to leave the saturation in because I want to keep that. I like that screen effect that was happening. With that, we're going to go down to our constructor and get rid of these. And come on, IntelliSense, I hate you sometimes. There we go. So as I was saying, that's the sort of thing you're going to stumble across when you are developing. You're going to have these brick wall moments where you hit something, you can't figure it out. I run into this sort of thing in my day job all the time. Now, for a bit more clarity and background on that, yes, I work as a C++ developer professionally. However, my specialty is maintaining and patching legacy code bases. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, is the short of it is I take really old code and make sure it keeps working. Every now and again I have to do some major retrofits, but that's my specialty, is taking legacy code, because I learned on old C++ programming practices, and they're pretty different to modern ones. And for people who are familiar with modern standards, you've probably seen that with my code work. But either way, you're going to run into brick walls while you're developing. Do not keep banging your head against it. You're wasting time, you're losing efficiency, and you're frustrating yourself, and you're just going to make more mistakes. So this is a perfect example. You hit one of these brick walls like I did here with depth of field. It's like, okay, I tried a couple of things. None of it's working. I don't understand why. I'm going to stop working on that code, and I'm going to go through in either a different period of time, when you're not writing code, in your own time if it's professional work, or maybe your employer gives you the opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to stop working, and I'm going to take an hour a day, an hour a week, however it is, to go do some studying. And in this example, that's what I'm going to do, is off camera in my own time, I'm going to go through and I'm going to read into post-processing. I thought I fixed this. Obviously not. So I can figure out what's going on there and try and fix that. But in the time being, though, instead of just sitting here talking, we still have like 10, 15 minutes left on the episode. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through and start work on that, what I called satiation, or the max consumption that a person can have before they can't eat anymore because they're full. So for that, I'm going to close out the player character because we don't need that right now. So stat line, we are going to add in a new private stat variable. And it is going to be a float. I'm trying to think, actually. How do I want to do that? Max and current? Because, yes, max and current. So it's going to be similar to... Where do we have that? Is that our complex needs? No, I've added that in here somewhere. Stamina. So it's going to be similar to this here. It is going to be our current value and a max value. So we want an edit defaults only. And yes, I know I still haven't gone through and updated my tooltips. I need to do that. But float current satiation. Okay, that's annoying me. Yeah, I will look into that. I don't think that's the correct spelling. For ease, current fullness. I know that's not a word, but... And then we also want float max fullness. We want a visible anywhere on our current and an edit defaults only on our max. The reason being is we don't want to accidentally or on purpose, whatever, modify the current fullness. We want the code to update that. So I'm going to say, now this is going to be down to how granular and how like accurate you want these to be. You could go 10, you could go 100. You could go 1,000 if you wanted to. I wouldn't recommend going anything over 100 for something like this, just because you're getting into a level of accuracy you don't need. Because you have to remember, with a float, it's 100 is actually that number. And do you really care about an 11th decimal place? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually go with 10. Just because that is a nice small number. And you can, like, if you need to worry about it, you can do factors of 10, things like that to multiply. So on top of that, though, we need to go into complexation. Where is it? We call it in our consumable items. Okay, so we are actually going to need to make some adjustments here. So first things first, we're going to open up our consumable item header, because we do need to add a new variable that we can use for its an item's fullness. Float fullness modifier. I'm going to give everything a default value of 0.1. Obviously, you're going to change that. Actually, no, sorry, we're going for 10. So I want to give everything a default value of 1. I was thinking using a value of 0 to 1 there. Oh, really IntelliSense. Now, what we want to do is add a new function in. This is going to be ufunction blueprint callable. And it's going to be... actually, it can be blueprint pure as well. Blueprint pure, it is going to be a Boolean, can character eat item. Const float reference fullness modifier. And this is also going to be a constant return. So what this is going to be is just a quick Boolean check, is if current fullness plus fullness modifier less than or equal to a max fullness. Actually, we don't even need to do the if. That is literally what we were returning. So what this is this is a check. It's like, can the player eat this? Now, ultimately for my game, I want it to be if a player tries to eat something and they're full, they have a status effect of throwing up, for example. So what we want to do there is do this. If stat line I just forgot what we called that, and I just created it. Can character eat item. And we want a negative value of that. So if they can't eat the item, do overeating behavior. And these are notes for myself later on. And again, things I would recommend you do as you're going through. This is code I don't want to write, like create right this second, because I want to think about how I want to do it. So I'm putting some notes in there. So with that, I've got that there. And then what we're going to do is add another function to our stat line component. Going to pretty much be the exact same thing, except actually we don't need blueprint pure on this one because it's a execution function. Void add fullness. And I'm just going to copy that there. This is not a constant because it's not returning anything. So we're going to create that. And current fullness plus equals fullness modifier. All right, we're going to add that to our consumable item stat line. Add fullness modifier. So that is the basics there. That is going to cause basically our stat line is going to keep track of how full is your stomach. Actually, no. Thinking about this, we don't want this logic on... Well, actually, no, sorry. This is going to be down to how you want your game to be if you're following along. If you want your player to be able to overeat, do what I'm about to do. If you want this to be a case of, oh, they can't eat, they're too full, this is where you would throw in your sorry, I can't eat behavior. And instead of doing any of this, you just drop out. What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to drop all of this out. Our food items don't need to know about how full we are. We're just going to call add fullness. What we also want to do there is here, no, you ate overeating. After we're adding that, we want to do the logic of, oh, have I overeaten? Yes, I have. Okay, I'm going to throw up, lose half of my stat for hunger and thirst. Something like that. So the other thing we need to do is we want to reduce our current fullness. Well, we've got a couple of values. We have right here we're calculating our tick per day. We need to basically have this value at twice its normal rate. However, this is all done within a single function. And our current fullness is using a float. It's not using a core stat. You could go through and add a core stat. However, that's a level of complexity. Actually, no. No, I'm not going to do it as a core stat. I want to keep it as something here, because then it's an easily modified variable. Like you could add a player trait, because I've mentioned how I want to add those later on, where it's like big stomach, so your max fullness could be 15. And we don't really need a percentile on these. These are just for yeah. No, I'm not going to do it as a core stat. I'm going to leave it as this. So what we want to do, well, no, we may as well, thinking about it, because we're just, what I was about to do was add in a float. I was going to add in a float fullness tick. Ultimately, we have 3 variables for fullness. A core stat is 3 variables. So we're actually going to add in another stat. So however, we're going to use the constructor to set these. F core stat, what did I say, 10. 0, 10, and 1. Actually, we want that to go down, so we want that to be a negative. And we're going to get rid of these, which will give us our IntelliSense errors, which is what we want. So stat line component. So we have here, let's go through day length in minutes. It's night starvation. Complex tick times 2. Okay, so no complex tick. So yeah, because these are daily values. So fullness dot adjust tick 0 minus complex tick. All right, and then we've got our can character eat item? No, we don't even need to expose that. I'm not going to expose that, I should say. If, like I was mentioning before, if you do plan on having like, no, you can't eat this, you're too full, you want to keep that can character eat item logic named how you would. So save that. And then we're going to go fix this issue here. So fullness dot adjust stat fullness modifier. So we still want to add this in here. Oh, actually, And these are some of the other things. Sorry, I realized I went silent there because I was just thinking. These are some of the other things you're going to run into. Is you're going to like, oh, this adjust stat doesn't do what I need because it's clamped. So what I'm going to do here is void force adjust const float reference amount. No, not force, override. Current plus equals amount, because I want to leverage the core stat, but I want to be able to go above its max value, where this will not let you, this will. So back to our stat line component. It's called that override adjust. So let's go override adjust fullness modifier. Now, this will also result in, where's our percentile? So this is now going to potentially have a range greater than 1. So fmath clamp, and we want to clamp that between a value of 0 and 1. And then that way, make sure these are done as floats. That way we don't have to worry about our percentile breaking, because we've now created a situation where our current can go above our max. I also want to add in a new one, float get Actually, no, I'm going to think about that one. I don't even know if I have a use. But I was going to add in a second one that was going to potentially return, like, instead of a 0 to 1, it would go above 1, and you could get, like, 1.1 if you're at 110%. But I don't see I need a use for that. So, with that, though, okay. I'm trying to think what else have we got that I wanted to try and cover. We've added in our fullness. We've got its tick. So let's do, and I know I'm over by a few minutes, but this episode's going to run a little long, just because, that depth of field stuff took a little longer to address than I thought it would. So. Now, saying that, now the build decides it's going to take forever. So, I'm going to pause the recording here, and I will be back as soon as we're actually back in the editor, just so we can take a quick look at our fullness information here. Oh, I say that and the build starts, so I will let it finish. But yeah, so with that, though, I am going to, as I was saying, we're going to do a quick test of this fullness, and that's where I'll end the episode. But again, this is the sort of thing where, unless you're trying to do exactly what I'm wanting to achieve with my game, you may need to make some modifications to how this is done. Like, I know a lot of games, there is either 0 side effects for overeating. You could just sit there and, I know Skyrim, there's infamous memes about how you can eat like 300 wheels of cheese that weigh a pound each. To regain your health. I don't want that. I don't want the player to be able to sit there and eat through an entire grocery store first thing in the morning to go about their day. I want them to have to be cognizant of okay, well, I need to eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do here, though, quickly, I'm just going to open up our mushroom item blueprint. When the editor wants to respond, consumable mushroom. There we go. So now you can see our fullness modifier here is 1. I'm actually going to set that to 7.5. We're going to eat 2 of them. I want that to actually push us over to make sure that logic works. So move that out of the way. We're going to play an editor. We're going to select our character here. Our stat line, and is fullness available to us? Yes, it is. I forgot about fixing that bleed amount. We'll do that before I end the episode, because that we don't want our character to be bleeding right out of the gate. So current fullness is 0 ticks per second. Yep. Okay, so let's go over here, pick up harvest mushroom off a berry bush, and harvest mushroom off the ground here. Open our inventory. You can see we have 2. So we're going to eat the first one. That should bring us up to about 7.5 with a slow decay. Our tick is stopped, I believe. And we're going to eat again. It's 15. Oh, we're not actually ticking, so it's not going down. But you can see that is going over. So that override adjust allows us to go above our max value there. And this is a situation where it would be a case of, okay, I've overeaten by 50%. I'm going to feel really sick. My thoughts are there again. I want to do some, obviously, testing and things like that. As you do with your game, you need to find those happy mediums. And these are values you change as you do iterations of your project. Customers, when it comes to games, that's your players. But customers may go, oh, I don't like this. I want something else. Now, depends how you're set up. You may respond to one. Could be a mass thing. However you want to run that there. Especially with games like you're potentially thousands upon thousands of players. So, anyway, so we're going to fix two things quickly before I end the episode. We're going to fix the fact that this isn't ticking. And we're going to get rid of that bleed effect. So, now we've done that, I'm going to close out of the editor. We are going to go up to our tick stats. And this is one that we don't care. There's no fancy logic. It's literally, you're going to... Well, actually, no, because if you're running your fullness... No, I'm not going to go to that level just yet. I'm going to go fullness dot tick delta time. And again, for those who may have skipped some of the original episodes, this is the whole reason why we have this dedicated tick stat function, is we can go through, we can add this in to that, and we know this is where all of our logic for ticking our stats is going to be held. You could, in theory, put all of this in... I thought I minimized all of these, obviously not. You could put all of these in your... Where is it? Your tick component, but then this would get really long. In here, I wanted this to be as small as possible. So we obviously have our super tick. We have our, if we're not paused, we're going to tick our stats. And if it's a stat line that's worried about body temperature, we're going to update our body temperature. But anyway, so we're going to get rid of our current bleed amount. We don't need that. And we added in the fullness tick to our generic tick stats. You could, again, and I need to think about it, but you could expand this to be a much larger function instead of just this straight up tick, where you do things like, okay, well, are you running? Yes. Okay, well, you don't really, your digestion doesn't accelerate if you're running. Your digestion doesn't accelerate for much other than when you're sleeping, which is something I need to try and figure out how I want to account for that in the game as well. So, with that though, folks, as I said, I was going to end the episode here. I do want to make an announcement though. It's not really an announcement. It's just some information for everyone. For anyone who hasn't seen, I have the comments I put up. I have set up a Discord. Links for it are in the description and on the channel about information. It's right now, as of recording this, I don't have anyone in there. However, feel free to hop in, ask questions in there if you want. It's just a general public Discord. I'm not sure how well it's going to go. If it works out, I'll leave it up. If not, I will take it down. But I figured I would throw up a Discord because I know there's been some questions about it. For anyone watching this episode further in the future, if the links aren't in the description or in my channel about information, I did bring the server down. So, anyways, folks, as always, thank you for watching. If there's any comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.